Okay, today's block is from the Block of the Day 2023, and this is 0407 Jelly Roll Rick Rack 8 inches. And it says here we have additional sizes for the 10-inch and the 12-inch block. This would be the third video I've done on this block and showing how to do a quilt on the other ones. And I'll have links to those in the description. But the first video I did showed how to make a quilt from jelly rolls, and then I got comments from people that they don't have access to jelly rolls, or they can't buy them, or whatever reason they don't have jelly rolls. How do you make this if you don't have jelly rolls? So that's when I made this part of Block of the Day in 2023, and I broke out all the units, in this case the half square triangles and the rectangles and the squares, and showed how you can do the block for one block, just cutting with your rotary cutter or your AccuQuilt. And then I included the 10 and 12-inch block information at the bottom. What I'm going to do today is go through this and show you how to calculate the fabric for just as it is on these instructions, since a lot of people have these instructions already, either downloaded from the YouTube or from the books that they bought. So, and then we'll go on and show you how you can change the size of this block and how that affects the fabric requirements. We will be using QUILTNOTES.com to figure out the block size and to figure out the fabric requirements. And the first thing I would like you to do is go to the Charts tab at QUILTNOTES.com, and you'll see we have three areas with charts in them. But for now, I want you to go to the fabric charts, and there's a fabric chart in PDF form, and there's a fabric chart in Excel form that you can download and follow along, as we're going to be filling out one of these charts in this video. For each of the charts, the PDF and the Excel, there's a chart for rotary cutting and there's a chart for AccuQuilt. So just download those and use the one that you want to. So we'll get back to that. Here is the chart. I'm using the Excel chart. I'm going to start first with the rotary cutting and fill that out, and then you'll see we'll do the AccuQuilt next. You'll fill these out almost exactly the same way, but so I won't be confused. We'll do the rotary cutting first, and then we'll go to the AccuQuilt. What we're going to do is fill out this chart, and this is a fabric cutting chart for rotary cutting. We'll put the name of the block here, Rick Rack, and then the number of blocks. For our purposes, we're going to use 24 blocks. And if you don't know how many blocks you need, you can go to one of these calculators on Quilt Notes. Under the Calculators tab, there's a calculator here for straight set quilts and one for on-point set quilts. You click on the little images below here, and you can fill out and design the size of your quilt. You can add sashings and cornerstones. You can add up to 5 borders, and it will give you the size of your quilt and how many blocks you need and the block size. So if you don't have that, that's where you would go to design your quilt. But we're going to, for our purposes, just use 24 blocks in our quilt. The grid size we're not going to worry about right now, and the block size we're going to do the 8-inch block size, because that's what is on these instructions. Okay, I don't know why it's doing that. And also the grid unit size, will fill that in later as well. But for now, we're just going to look at this sheet as it is, and we're going to fill out the form and see how much fabric we need for a quilt with 24 8-inch blocks. On these sheets, we have space for different fabric. On the rotary cutting, we have 7 fabrics, and on the AccuQuilt, we have 6 fabrics. So I'm going to fill in the fabric names, and for this block, I'm going to have a light and a dark. So we'll put right here light, and then here we'll put dark. If you have more fabrics or less fabrics while you're filling out this form for any other block, you can put any kind of name you want on here. You can put background, you can put medium blue or light blue, however you want to describe your fabric. You write them across here. In this section here, these 3 lines and these columns that I'm outlining here, we'll fill those out and one at a time, and I'll show you how we do that. So we look at the cutting diagram, and for an 8-inch block, we have patch A, which is a half square triangle, and here it tells you that it's a 2-inch finished half square triangle. So on unit size here, we're going to put 2 inches because it's 2-inch finished, and we'll put patch A, half square triangle. Then it asks for number of units in 1 block. So this is the 1 block, and we see the half square triangles. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 in 1 block, so we'll put 4 here. Now we need to fill out the total number of units, these half square triangle units, in the quilt. So we have 24 blocks, and we have 4 in each block. So 24 times 4 is 96. So we'll need a total of 96 half square triangles that finish at 2 inches. For that, we go to Quilt Notes, and under the Blocks tab, we click on that, and at the very top you see this section called Common Units, and here are more common units that you see in a quilt block. Let's go to half square triangle. We'll click on that, and let's look at our information here. We need a total of 96, and it finishes at 2 inches. So we'll put the number of patches needed, 96, and then the finished size is 2 inches. And here you can choose a piecing method if you like. You can do patches only if you're not making half square triangles, the unit itself. You can pick 2 at a time, 8 at a time, or you can choose AccuQuilt. And really, any method you choose, you probably will have enough fabric for whatever way you're going to actually piece the half square triangles. If you're going to use triangle paper or some special ruler, you just want to make a test block to make sure you will have enough fabric, or just purchase a little extra fabric. But for most of these, you should have enough fabric. But that's just a caution for you. I'm going to choose 8 at a time because we're going to make so many, 96, and I'll press calculate. So here are our results, and I'm going to move these up here. So it's the 96 half square triangles that finish at 2 inches. The fabric we need is 12 inches or 0.33 yards, and that's, you'll see it for fabric 1. So let's put 12 inches and 0.33 yards for the light fabric. And since we need the same amount for this dark fabric, we'll just copy these over to this section. So we have the light fabric will need 12 inches and the dark fabric will need 12 inches. Now we have our cutting instructions, and it says cut 2 strips at 6 inches times width of fabric. So we can write in here, cut 2 at 6 inches times width of fabric. And then the second part, you want to subcut 12 squares, because that's the size square you'll use for your 8 at a time method. You might want to put over here 8 at a time, so you'll remind yourself that's the method you're using. Now we found out how much fabric we need for the half square triangles. So let's move on to patch B. For patch B, we need a 2-inch by 6-inch finished rectangle, and we need 1 patch of each color for each block. So let's write the unit size is 2 by 6, and we're going to call this patch B rectangle. And there's 1 in each unit. and we have 24 blocks, so 24 times 1 is 24. We have 24 in the quilt. Now the reason I put 1 here, because you can look, there are 2 B patches in this block, but one is the light and one is dark. Whatever we do for the light fabric, since they're the same size and the same shape and the same number of patches needed, we'll do the same thing for the light and the dark. Both are the same. So let's figure out how much we need of this. So we'll go back to Quilt Notes and click on the Blocks tab again and look for Square and Rectangle, because this is a rectangle. We need 24 patches, and the finished width is 2 inches. The finished length is 6 inches. And press Calculate. And here are our results. So we'll need 14 inches or 0.39 yards for each fabric. So we'll put 14 and 0.39. And then we'll just copy this over because we need the same amount for the dark fabric. Here are the cutting instructions, and we'll write that in. Cut 2 strips, 6.5 inches times width of fabric, and then we'll subcut 2.5 inch segments for 24 rectangles. So you'll do this for each of the fabrics, the light and the dark. Now let's look at our patch C. We have another rectangle. It's just a different shape or different size. So we'll fill this out the same way. This is a 2 by 4 inch finished patch C rectangle, and there's 1 in each block for 24 blocks. And so now let's look up our rectangle. We can use the same screen we used before. The number of patches is 24. The width is 2 inches. The length is 4 inches. And press Calculate. So now we need 10 inches or 0.28 yards. So we'll put our 10 here and 0.28. Copy these over and then write in our cutting instructions. Cut 2 at 4.5 inches times width of fabric. Subcut 2.5 inch segments for 24 rectangles. So now we have our patch A, B, and C. Let's close this out. And let's go on to patch D. Okay, so patch D is a square. It's a 2 inch finished square. And again, we have 1 light and 1 dark. So we'll put 2 inch here. And patch D. And we have 1 in each block, 24 blocks. And then let's pull up our quilt notes, and our common units are square. So we have 24 patches, 2 inch width and 2 inch length. So we'll need 6 inches or 0.17 yards. And then again, we're going to copy this over because we need 1 of each, the light and the dark. Our cutting instructions: cut 2 at 2.5 inches times width of fabric. Whoops. And subcut 24 squares. we have one more thing to do. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see. We have all of our patch A, B, C, and D, and for each fabric we have an amount. So we're going to go to the bottom and total up each column for the light and the dark, inches and yards. So for each fabric, the light and the dark, you need 42 inches or 1.17 yards, about 1.25 yards of each. So this is the total amount of fabric you'll need for 24 blocks at 8-inch finished. Now I'm on the AccuQuilt tab. So this is the AccuQuilt side. And everything we started with, all the things we filled out at the beginning, the name of the quilt, 24 blocks, 8-inch block, light and dark fabric, patch A, the sizes and number are all the same, patch B, patch C, patch D. Everything that you see here is exactly the same for rotary cutting and for AccuQuilt. You're just going to find fabric and cutting instructions a little bit differently, and there's a space in here to write your die number that you're going to use. So let's go to Quilt Notes, and for this we're going to go to the AccuQuilt tab. We press on that and scroll down a little ways till you get to Search by Shape and Finished Size. We'll search for half square triangle, and finished size we're going to put 2 inches. And this, when you put 2 inches in here, you'll get everything from 2 inches up to 3 inches, but not including 3 inches, and I'll show you. So we click search, and this gives you the dies that you can use for the 2-inch finished half square triangle. But you'll see here we have 2-inch finished, 2-inch finished. This is 2.5-inch finished, and here's another 2-inch. And these down here are 2 1/4 and 2.5. So these don't do us any good for this. It's just easier to separate out sizes this way. So let's go to this. This one is a 4-inch cube shape 3. Let's use this one. And we'll press calculate. So the die number is 55546. We're going to write that here. That tells us which die we're going to use. And if you want to put your cube in there or whatever, go ahead and write all that in there. There's plenty of room. So we need 96 half square triangles at 2 inches. We know this is 2 inches, so all we need to put in here is our 96 number. And we press calculate. So our results are here for the dark fabric, and the light fabric is going to be exactly the same. 23 inches are 0.64 yards. So let's write here 23.64, and we'll copy these over for the light and the dark. And then we'll write our cutting instructions. So we'll cut 5 strips at 4.5 inches times width of fabric, and then we're going to fan fold 4-inch segments for 96 half square triangle patches. And we call these patches because everything we cut in AccuQuilt are patches. So you'll see that it cuts 2 at a time. So if you're using light fabric, it'll cut 2 light colored patches. So that's how you fill that out. Now let's go on to the next one. So let's look at the rectangles. And for the rectangles, for the size, you'll put the smallest one, the width, which in this case is 2 inches. So we'll search. And we're looking for a 2-inch by 6-inch finished rectangle. Here's a 2 by 4, 2 by 4, 2 1/4 by 4.5, 2.5 by 5. So none of those fit the bill for this. So in this case, we'll go over to the blocks and the common units and press on square rectangle. So we need number of patches is 24, and finished width is 2 inches, and the length is 6 inches, and we press calculate. So you see, here's the cutting instructions, and you'll also see the AccuQuilt dies. The only things available are the 2-inch strip cutter. So you could use your strip cutter to cut these. You'd have to use your 2-inch finished strip cutter and then cut those into 6.5-inch widths. What you can do in this case, let's just say we'll use this 55014 die. We'll put that in here. And so we'll cut 2 strips. I would write down the same fabric you need here. So we'll need 14 inches or 0.39 yards. And remember, we need it for both of them. And then your cutting instructions, you'll do the same thing. Cut 2 strips. .5 inches times width of fabric, and then you'll subcut 2.5 inch segments. Now let's find out how much fabric we need for 96 half square triangles, 2-inch finished. Once you cut your 6.5-inch wide strips, you can use your 2.5-inch strip cutter to cut your rectangles. So if you have a 6.5-inch strip cutter, you can use that. You can use both of those to cut the rectangles. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. And it is a 2x4 rectangle. So let's go back to AccuQuilt, and we need a rectangle, and we'll search for a 2-inch one because it's the smallest width or measurement. So here's a 2x4 die, here's a 2x4, and then these are 2.25 and 2.5. So either of these two, if you have them, we'll use the 8-inch cube, and we'll put the die number 55715, and then we'll need 24 of these rectangles, and calculate. So we'll need 11 inches or 0.31 yards. 11.31. Copy these over. And then write our instructions. Cut 2 strips. 2 at 5.5 inches times width of fabric. And fan fold. 5.5-inch segments. Cut 24 rectangles. So you just copied your cutting instructions here. Now for the last one, we need a square, 2-inch finished square. So let's close this out and go to square, 2-inch finished, and then find your 2-inch finished die that you're going to use. Here's a 2-inch multiples. This is 2.5, that won't work. Here's a 2-inch square. It's in the 4-inch cube. And then here's a 2-inch square in the 8-inch cube. And that's it for the 2-inch squares. Let's just use the 4-inch cube just to see how that goes. So this is 55545. 55545. And we need 24 squares. Calculate. So we need 5 inches or 0.14 yards. 5.14. Copy these over. And let's write our cutting instructions. Cut 1 at 4.5 inches times width of fabric. And fan fold, 4.5-inch segments for 24 squares. And there you have your cutting instructions and your fabric requirements for AccuQuilt. The last thing you'll do is total up all your 4 columns to get your fabric requirements for the entire quilt. Now I'm going to show you how to change the block size and what numbers to use in these charts after that. To change the block size, to change it to most any size you want, we're going to look at this sheet again, the instructions. I'm going to use this diagram to make a grid. We need to find out what kind of grid we have. So to do that, we look at usually the smallest unit or patch. So we have a 2-inch finished half square triangle and a 2-inch finished square, and those are right here. So here's the half square triangle, here's the square, and I'm just outlining these pieces here. And you can kind of see what I'm starting to make a grid. And when we start this grid, then we're just going to finish it and go and cut this rectangle, these rectangles up, and finish out the grid because we want all these grid spaces to be the same size. So we do this. Now this was the 8-inch block we've been working on, and you'll notice that all of these units are 2-inch finished. 2-inch finished half square triangle, and well, this is a 2x6 and a 2x4, and this is a 2-inch. So that means that this is 2 inches, this is 2, this, and this. So if we look at our patch B, which is 2x6 inch, it's 2 inches wide by 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. So this is your 2x6 inch unit. And if this is an 8-inch block, let's say that you wanted a different size block. Let's go to QUILTNOTES, open that up again. We're going to go to the charts section again, and this middle section here, we're going to select grid and block finished size. So if we look at this, we see there are 4 grid spaces across and 4 down. So this is a 4x4 grid. So if we choose a 4x4 grid, then we're going to choose our block size. So these are common block sizes for a 4x4 grid. You see we've been working on an 8-inch block, so I'll click this and it gives me a grid unit finished size of 2 inches. And that's what we've been using here. You see each one of these grid sizes finish at 2 inches. To change the block size, we're going to go to QUILTNOTES. And on the Charts tab, we'll look at the Select Grid and Block Size right here. So we know our grid is 4x4, so we'll choose a 4x4 grid. Now we can choose our block size. And if we press on this, it gives us some options. And these are common options used for a 4x4 inch grid. And some of them don't always work out perfectly, and I'll show you. So let's say we wanted a 10-inch block. Then we'll see that our grid size, our grid unit size is 2.5 inches. So here, this would be a 2.5 inch finished half square triangle, and it would be a 2.5 by 7.5 finished rectangle. So those numbers probably won't work out well. They're hard numbers to work with, and they're not common numbers we use in quilting. So let's go to a 12-inch block, and we see the grid unit size is 3 inches. So that means you would have a 3-inch finished half square triangle and a 3-inch by 9-inch finished rectangle and a 3 by 6-inch finished rectangle and a 3-inch finished square. So that's a bit better number to work with. But let's go up to the 16-inch block, and we see our grid unit size is 4 inches. So that means that each grid here is going to be 4 inches. So we'll just put 4s in here. And if you add 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, that's 16-inch block. Okay, so that means that this would be a 4-inch finished half square triangle. This would be a 4 by 12 12-inch finished rectangle. and this would be a 4 by 8 inch rectangle, and this would be a 4-inch finished square. So to fill out your chart, and we'll put up here the number of blocks would still be 24. The grid size would be 4 by 4. The block size will be 16 inches. And then we have the grid unit size is 4 inches. So you'll just use those numbers instead of the numbers here. This would be a 4-inch finished half square triangle. We'll still have the same numbers in the block and the same numbers in the unit. But your cutting instructions and your yardage figures will change. Here you would do the same thing. All you're changing is the size, the unit size. Everything else stays the same as far as the number in the block and the total number of units in the quilt. So that's how you change your block size. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll have some more coming in the next few days. Thanks for watching.